This is Fox News.
It's time for WPTV's First Alert Weather from the WPTV News Channel 5 newsroom. Now with 7 meteorologists covering the Treasure and Gold Coasts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now here's WPTV's First Alert meteorologist.
It's going to be a dry, hot day. Lots of sunshine this afternoon. Highs reaching 87 degrees tonight. Lows dropping into the low 60s once again. Patchy fog developing overnight. Staying dry through Friday and even the start of the weekend. Temperatures in the upper 80s once again tomorrow, Friday, Saturday as well. And then some relief from this heat arrives Sunday as temperatures drop back down into the upper 70s and low 80s for daytime highs. I'm WPTV First Alert meteorologist Jennifer Correa for WSTU 1450, Martin County's Heritage Station.
You are listening to WSTU, Stewart, Jensen Beach, Hope Sound, Martin County's Heritage Station.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Good morning and welcome back. We have another beautiful day here in Stewart as we normally do. Great show on tap. I've got Talk About Martin's Eric Miller in the studio with me, and you never know what Eric's going to say, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Neither does he.
Very informative. And we know when you get really serious about something, so it becomes very apparent. So we're going to get on track here for a minute.
How can you tell?
Talkaboutmartin.com is where you want to go to find out everything that's happening in Martin County. It's Eric's website. I'm one of the contributors there, and a lot of great information. And we're going to talk a little bit about really the Republican Party today and some infiltrations and a lot of different topics. It's a lot of fun. Before we get into that, I, of course, want to thank my sponsors. Indiantown Marina is one of South Florida's best boat storage facilities located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway. They're a very well-protected hurricane hull, and they are home to many in the cruising community who find the facility ideally situated and user-friendly. Folks, it's a do-it-yourself or full-service boatyard, and if you own a boat, you're going to need service. That's really the guarantee there. They can handle it, or you can come out and do that work yourself. Give them a call at 772-631-3272, 631-3272. Spring break is coming up. We have our friends and family coming in from up north, so don't forget to take them to the best-kept secret in Martin County. Come by boat, car, or stroll the boardwalk and explore what that best-kept secret has to offer. Features local artists, Airbnb, art gallery, boat charters, a marina, so you can come by boat as well, and a craft and creamery, craft beers, wine, and 24 flavors of ice cream. What is this wonderful place? It's the Fish House Art Center located down in the Pocket in Port Salerno. You can look them up online, thefishhouseartcenter.com, or give them a call, 221-5482, 772. 221-5482. Be sure to check them out. And Commercial Mortgage has been in the industry of small balance corporate finance since 2003. Their focus is on equity new debt solutions, challenging corporate foreclosures and debt restructures. Commercial Mortgage never charges a front fee or deposit, and consultations are always free. Areas of expertise include hotels, marinas, office buildings, restaurants, apartments, multifamily condos, golf courses, home builders, land development, including new and repurposed developments. Call Commercial Mortgage today at 561-310-5295. Again, that's 561-310-5295. Or visit them online, commercialmortgagellc.com. And a real quick reminder, if you visit my website, thecaseyingramshow.com, you can sign up for an email blast where I will send out a note every Monday that lets you know who that special guest in the studio will be. And finally, don't forget about the NAACP of Martin County. They are having their Freedom Fund Gala, and that's going to be Saturday, March 11th, coming up at the Marriott Hutchinson Island Beach Resort. Folks, I know the tickets are selling out really quickly there. It's black tie optional, and the ticket prices are $115. So you'll want to contact the NAACP, 772-215-2411 for ticket information.
Bet Dilbert won't be there.
No.
No.
bet
not.
not.
He's been canceled.
When you get canceled, you get canceled.
You get canceled.
Huh? Nice.
Yep.
Well, we're not canceled yet, are we, Eric?
I hope not.
So, Eric
Lord willing.
Miller, talk about Martin. I wanted to open up the show. We're going to be talking a lot about politics, Republican Party, infiltration.
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about your background and why you're so involved.
My background. Background in politics goes back in Martin County several years ago, decades actually. Was encouraged to join the Martin County Republican Executive Committee years ago, 20 plus years ago, and did. Began seeing things from the inside and understanding how politics actually works, especially in Marshall County. And it wasn't far into my tenure as a elected sitting precinct committeeman that I was encouraged through what we would consider to be the Freedom Caucus or the Liberty Crew, or just a bunch of good leadership within the REC. People like Colonel Chuck Wynn actually served as the adjutant to Colin Powell at the Pentagon, was one of the members, and he and I struck up a good political relationship. We had some common grounds, both being airborne infantry. And when the lights started turning on as to not, I'm going to say shenanigans more than malfeasance, because malfeasance came later into the story, and there is probably a whole hour we could spend just talking about what happened across that timeline with the MCREC. But we ended up forming something called Iron Claw, where four of us went as write-in candidates to close the primary, because the Republican Party locally has been infiltrated by a large number of Democrats. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me where the Democrats actually held their last meeting. I've seen a few of them online. They may be coming back into life, but there's a lot of them, Jackie, that were former Democrats that are now being heralded by Republicans in this county. And a Republican should be called a Republican, and a Democrat should be called a Democrat, and they should stand for what they stand for. And we were the only county in the state of Florida when I was with them that had a platform. Okay, and that was an outcome of efforts led by myself and other people like Colonel Wynn and Cindy Lucas and a whole bunch of other people that insisted that we put on paper who we are and what we stand for so that people know where we're coming from. But that didn't seem to work out with too many people, because you get people like Troy McDonald that are elected as Republicans that stand up there and say they don't want God in their meetings, and then they tell people that come to the podium in the city of Stewart that if they're not from Stewart, they should just sit down and shut up.
That did happen. It's the city of Stewart. They just had a vote on whether or not to have invocation before their meetings, which the school board has invocation, the county has invocation. The city of Stewart did not anymore, and Commissioner Chris Collins brought this up to the forefront. And at first it was voted yes, and then on the second reading, it ended up being voted down, and then it came back again in January with Commissioner Collins' urging, and it ended up passing 3-2 again. It was a real struggle, and you're right, Eric. That meeting room was absolutely full of folks, whether they were within the city or not, that were really concerned about having invocation. And it wasn't just about Christian invocation; it was about invocation. And so it did get passed. Yes.
Amen. And ask yourself this. These are elected officials that are trying to tell you that your spiritual trail that you're following can't be brought into the conversation about how you're supposed to be governed, okay? And now I want you to look at them, and I want you to look and see who they're registered as. Are they registered as a Republican? Are they registered as a Democrat? Okay? If they're registered as a Republican, go ask your local Republican Party. Where is Mary Lynn Magar? Where is the leadership? Where is James Campo? All right, the new state committeeman. Where are you on these issues? Why are you not holding press conferences? Why are you not putting out press releases saying that you don't condone it? Because it's easier to go along, to get things done than it is to do the right thing. And that's the problem that we have within our political system. And I am so upset because we live in the greatest place on the face of the planet right now. We are in the state of Florida. We are one of the best economies in the world. We are in one of the freest states in the world. We have one of the best governors that actually gets it. He's surrounded with good people. This is a first. I had a lieutenant sitting governor sit and tell me, as state committeeman, elected state committeeman from Martin County, where I served 2 terms, you want to talk about the shenanigans that were going on locally. When I when I was elected, the reason that I wanted to do this so bad is that the then sitting governor, Charlie Crist, had brought in a strip club owner from Orlando to be his hand-picked chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, to wit I now represented. And that was unacceptable to me. And I wrote Charlie Crist a letter, and I told him, I am running against your hand-picked man. I went in as a freshman, unknown, and when I took my seat, I took over a third of the vote with a simple message. We need responsible reform within this party. We need to cut the shenanigans out. We need to quit giving mortgages to people. We need to quit funneling money through PACs, because the trust that we lose today is the vote that we lose tomorrow.
Folks, you can see how passionate Eric Miller is, and you have been deeply involved for many years, so much so that you've really stepped out of belonging to the REC party, but you are now a voice for Republicans. You're following the Constitution, and this is where you're following, especially our local politics. And let's turn to Indiantown, Eric.
I'm sorry. I am passionate about this because this is my country. This is your country, people. This is your neighborhood. You should want to stand for it and protect it as much as I do. This isn't anger.
Well,
okay?
Eric, I
this
think
is passion.
It's passion, and I believe. And we have talked about this so many times. You can't just believe because there's an R behind a name, they're holding Republican principles, and the same for the Democrats. Just because there's a D behind a name, does that mean that they're truly holding Democratic principles? You need to vet each person personally,
and then take them for what they do. People like Troy McDonald that sit up there now and say that if you are not from the city of Stuart, you don't have any reason to come to this podium and address us. What?
One thing that amazed me too is they counted how many people were actually within the city limits, and there was less than a dozen, 7 or 8, and I thought that is hardly representative of what the city of Stuart residents want. If you only have 7 or 8 people there that were opposed to prayer, I think it was an invocation at the time, and just the whole thing. I mean, there was a lot of people that were very passionate, and religion is the basis for all disagreements in the history of the world, and people are very passionate about the religion. And America is founded on
it's a protected
Christianity.
Freedom in our Constitution, which most of these people, like the people on the county commission, seem to have forgotten. You want to look at a bucket full of elected Republicans? There's 5 of them that are sitting up there. Some of them have been up there for over 20 years. Over 20 years. And
term
you want
limits.
to know why you're at where you're at right now? Because of the decisions of the people that you elected 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 4 years ago. That's why.
We need term limits. City of Stuart does have them now. Our county does not. I would love to see them in Congress.
It's on its way. I think you can expect to see, excuse me, I'm going to cut you off, but I'm going to tell you something that's kind of inside ballpark stuff right now. Mm-hmm. And there is a movement afoot to do 2 different things, to get 2 different things on the ballot. And one is to change the way that these people are elected, meaning that they are only elected from a smaller district where we would have 7 commissioners and not 5. And they would only be elected by the people that live in a radius around them. And then the other one is to kind of change the whole term limit situation for the county commission. You know,
I'd like to see that change across the board. I can't tell you how many times even our current Congressman Mast, when he was running for office, yes, I believe in term limits. There should be term limits, and now he's into his 4th term. He even signed a pledge.
You signed, you've got a copy of the signed
But that's
pledge.
what happens. They get into Congress, and I believe, it's money and power. It's almost like an addiction. It's just a different kind of addiction.
Mr. Stock Insider Trading himself, up there with Nancy Pelosi,
he's done very
another
well
good
with the
Republican.
Stock trades. Done very well with the stock trades. But that's what happens. You get into Congress and you forget about those commitments that you made to the people, and it just goes by the wayside. And I hope that does come to fruition here. We need term limits. It gives fresh ideas, fresh people into political offices. Every once in a while, I've regretted having a term limit in some cases, but it's so few that I think it's the best thing for overall for the country and for people. We need fresh ideas. We need fresh people. And I think they kind of lose touch with what's going on out there when you're in office so long. They lose touch with what's really happening for the everyday person.
Well, think about it. If you're Doug Smith and you're sitting there for 20 years and 95% of what's being brought to you is staff-driven, that you haven't had an original thought that's come out of your legislative mind in the past 20 years to begin with, the staff is what's driving this, the sustainable living
Eric,
crew.
you just touched on something that always bothers me, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard our commissioner say, I'm voting for this because staff recommended it.
Oh, my gosh.
I scream, I'm like, why do we have commissioners if we're just going to do what staff recommends? I elected you to research these issues and represent me, not take what staff recommends. I have no control over
Exactly.
staff. I don't get to vote for those people.
Well, do you know that the top three of the top 10 employers in this county are governmental? All right, the school board, the commission, and the sheriff's office. The school board is actually the number one employer in this county. They employ more people than anybody else in this county. So, do you think staff might have a little bit of power?
Those 3 units have surpassed Martin Memorial Health or Cleveland Clinic now?
I believe the school board is number one, yes.
Isn't that something? Okay.
Yep. Okay. And then Martin Memorial, and then the county commission, if my memory serves me. But I am getting old, so I may be wrong
Well,
on
that goes
that
across
one
the country.
particular
That's
fact.
our
you
number
know?
one employer is the federal government, so they employ more than anybody else. So we're definitely getting heavy on the government side, which is why you want to wake people up and say we need to get involved.
Self-governed.
You know, and let's go back to Indiantown again a little bit, because you first brought up some of the infiltration in the last election. There was Robert Burns that came in. He was hired from Brian West, and he was basically Guyton Stone's, we believe, like a campaign manager, right?
Oh, he was Guyton's campaign manager. He also worked on the Janet Hernandez campaign a little bit, too.
So, and Robert Burns is from actually Brevard County.
He is.
So it was a little interesting that somebody from that has nothing to do supposedly with
Made my
Indiantown.
eyebrows rise.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of work on that. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit more because you've been following some of the Brevard County politics and talk about infiltration. You shared with me a video on YouTube. We can share it after the show in the comments so folks can see it. But there's been infiltration in the REC up there as well.
Yeah, there has. And you know, on that end of it, follow the money. Really, I mean, the doors need to be closed. If we're going to have a Republican Party of Florida, we need to do it to where the doors can be closed. You actually go in to serve, and you don't go in for self-aggrandizement and dollars like these guys do. They set up consultancies in the back end and turn so much money around, and that's kind of what happened in Indiantown, where you have a situation that was pretty ugly. A former employee from Opelika by the name of Howard Brown came in and applied for the position of being the village manager, and they elected him. And he brought with him a lot of very, let's just say, shady practices and standards of performing his jobs as a manager, and he brought a lot of shadows with him and baggage at the same time. And he met up with a young crew, a whole new government that had been formed from the ground up, and it's really been kind of nice to be able to have, one, proactively removed myself from that situation. And thank you, Mary Lynn Magar, state representative at the time, for taking our meeting and listening to us. Our neighbors petitioned that we be removed from those boundaries, and we had 80+% of our neighbors that signed on to petition to be removed. And we took that to Mary Lynn Magar, and she worked to get us removed from those boundaries. Now, that is what a state representative should be doing, things like this. And this self-aggrandizement that you see a lot of them getting up and doing with bills being filed and this being done, and for what reason? I mean, let's ask ourselves, not only at a state level, but at a local level. So, anyway, thank you, Mary Lynn.
They can file a bill, even though they know it's never going to get passed, they can say they're doing something.
Yeah, it's funny to watch. It really is. It's a zoo, and the more you understand it, I guess the more effective you can be in it after a while. But anyway, nonetheless, Indiantown, Howard Brown came in. Howard Brown was involved in an FBI sting investigation, largest in municipal criminal history in the state of Florida. It was a 4-year investigation. He went from Opelika, came up here, got hired, started to influence a young man by the name of Anthony Dowling, who is a member of YEO, Young Elected Officials, 30 and under, Soros-backed organization that likes to put progressive ideology into the heads of young elected officials and begin moving them in a direction of progressivism and changing all of these radical CRT standards and Juneteenth and the 16 whatever project it was, because that was they were rewriting American history through these young young kids whose egos were being inflated.
Now, we have to know, though, that Indiantown, they don't run a Republican or Democrat ticket, right?
Nope,
it's nonpartisan.
It's completely bipartisan.
So you really have to figure out who you're voting for.
You really have to do your
Stewart's
homework
the same
at that
way,
point.
city of Stewart.
Yeah, but here, here's a group of 5,000 people rough that live in Indiantown, and you only have 800 to 1,000 that show up to vote. With a lot more eligible voters that actually participate. So the influence you have to have is actually over a very small number of people. If you can get 300 to 500 people to listen to you and you can coalesce them and convince them to vote the right people, well, you're going to win an election out there. And it's a hot spot right now for development. There's so much open land and just an open desire right now to build out and put things out there that it's actually scary to sit and watch. But anyway, then you have Guyton Stone. We talked about Anthony, and then you have Guyton. Guyton runs a local business there, evidently several different businesses, because he reported on his campaign reports 2 campaigns ago, as Janet Hernandez did, that they gave a certain amount of money to a company called Guyton Marketing. And when you look that up on Sunbiz through Florida, you can't find any legitimate corporation that's registered as Guyton Marketing. And I found it interesting that both Hernandez and Guyton Stone did that, but as it turns out, it looks like, and this is part of the investigation that's going on right now at a state level, including getting back to Mr. Robert Burns in Brevard County and Brian West, who, here's how it all comes together. Brian West is or was, and still is, I guess, a developer.
Iggy, can you put up the chart that Eric has to kind of show everybody?
Thank you, because this does get complicated. Brian West is a developer. He owns parcels of land in Indiantown that are developable. Ooh, I like that word. It's challenging. He also owns land in Brevard County and was looking to develop that, and that's where he was kind of arrested on bribery charges, and they involve a sitting commissioner up there in Palm Bay, Kenny Johnson. And Kenny Johnson is good friends with our friend Anthony Dowling in Indiantown. Anthony Dowling, through Mr. Kenny Johnson, who is the cousin to Robert Burns, brought Mr. Burns into town. Now, Robert Burns, here is a man that was brought up on charges over 5 times while he served in the United States Army for rape. All right, and this wasn't a typical rape. He would use his position as a medic to get date rape drugs, and then he would date rape the females, and then he would rape them. And not to get too graphic, but he wouldn't do it traditionally. And he found his way over 5 times. He was put in jail and arrested and convicted for child abuse, for leaving his child in a vehicle outside of a casino for hours, locked in the car while he was in gambling with funds that were given to him as campaign manager for politicians in Brevard County. And I'll tell you what, I'd be willing to bet, and we're going to find out, if some of that money that went through Guyton Marketing didn't end up in Robert Burns' bank account as well. You see, he was brought in here by Mr. West to begin to influence with a corrupt village manager that was already a bribery expert down in Opelika. He had to see it coming, because he didn't get touched. He just kind of ghosted his way out of there.
A lot of concerning things you've said, and you've brought them up before. With the rape charges, was he convicted?
It turns out that the Attorney General of Florida has made a statement to that fact, that he considers Robert Burns to be a convicted rapist. So I'm going to go on the Attorney General's determination on that. Burns will argue that he was never convicted, but again, remember, these are military proceedings. They are not civil proceedings. That's all I'll say to that.
Okay.
But there was enough that he was not kept in the military. He paid some serious fines for some other things that they actually were able to nail him on, and he was eliminated from that. Now let's go back to Kenny Johnson for a second, because Kenny, not only was he in Palm Bay, Kenny Johnson, his cousin, not only was he a commissioner in Palm Bay, but he also was a coach with the high school and was subsequently arrested and convicted for pedophilia for sending pictures of him, graphic pictures of himself to one of the students on one of his sports teams. Okay. Last 2 weeks ago, roughly, let's call it 21 days ago, the FBI showed up at his house and there was yellow tape out around the entire perimeter of the house. So more to come on that. I'm sure we'll find out more of what's going on. But I find it encouraging that the FBI's nose is that deep because sin rolls downhill. And that sin from Brevard rolled down here in the form of Robert Burns and planted itself in Indiantown.
That's what was so interesting. That's right. We're talking all the way up in Brevard County, and all of a sudden Indiantown finds the same players up there.
Because Anthony Dowling is friends with Kenny Johnson, the convicted pedophile.
So there's your connection to
and
start bringing everybody together.
That brings them in, and Anthony says, you're up for re-election, guys. We got to keep you in here because we're doing such a great job. We can't let these conservative crackers get in here. We got to keep them out. White man bad. And that's what they did.
Right. And know that, too, that with Robert Burns, Randy Fine had many complaints against him, and he's been recently, has about 116 total charges of illegal elections. So those are things that they're going to be reviewing, and we'll see what it actually comes out, if he's convicted or what he's convicted of, how it all plays out here in the courts. Maybe the courts. I don't know.
One of the complaints that I filed on behalf of Tony Zwiner, I was representing Tony Zwiner at the time as one of the candidates and running against Janet Hernandez for one of the council seats when all of this was taking place. So I had a firsthand seat watching this while it all unfolded. And yeah, it's one of my complaints is still open on that. Scott Watson, who you've had on the show multiple times and has talked about it, and we'll put Scott's. Well, folks, what we'll do on talkaboutmartin.com is if you give me a little time, I'll take some of the old stories that we've done in the past, and we'll put a page together that if you want to follow the chronology on what we're talking about, this is a 2-year journey.
Scott's actually tuning in now, and he just wanted to make it clear. Brian West was the one that hired Robert Burns.
Correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, Brian. Let's get back on topic. But
Brian bought land in Indiantown and wanted it rezoned.
So
a lot of interest here in who's on that council, right?
Exactly. There's a lot of interest. Thanks for bringing me back to point. I appreciate it. You know me, I get in a boat.
I know.
I'll keep rowing until
passionate.
I get go. Oh, where am I? Let's hit the compass. So Brian West wanted to develop some land there. He ended up getting busted in Palm Bay prior to his ability to be able to petition down here. And the dots started to connect, especially Robert Burns. You know, this Robert Burns character with the Space Coast rocket shows up all of a sudden after these mysterious funds go out to Guyton Marketing that doesn't exist, $1,250 roughly between him and Janet that went to it. Oh, and by the way, Guyton Stone, here's a guy that American Express has sued and is garnishing his wages because he couldn't pay his American Express bill, okay? It was enough that they took him to court and won garnishment over him. But he's sitting vice mayor right now in Indiantown, folks, okay? That's who you elected. Anyway, back to the story. So Burns now comes into town, and he's running all of these false allegation stories on something called the Space Coast Rocket. He did what I did. I went to WordPress.com, and I took a domain name, talkaboutmartin.com, and I started a blog because I wanted to talk about what was going on. Well, he did the same thing. He did a very effective job with it. The only problem was he was lying. He was making up companies. He was making up information. He was lying about people and telling falsehoods instead of doing like we did and documenting everything about the falsehoods that he's been telling and the other ones have been telling. And I don't think, that they're still scratching their head trying to figure out why we're able to get away with all of this. It's because we are telling the truth. We can document what we say. So Brian comes down, says, go down, help these guys. I need to get my building done. In comes the money. Out go just days before. Remember, you only need 300 to 400 people to vote for you in the select 400. If it was 800 people, you need 401 people to vote for you. Okay? So all of a sudden, his candidate that's running against him, Guyton Stones, ends up being called a racist, where he was shown next to a rebel flag and fake Facebook posts that all of a sudden, hours before the election start to hit the streets. He loses the election by 28 votes. clearly in the lead the whole time. Guyton did not stand a chance until Robert Burns came in here.
Well, the other interesting thing with Guyton Stone as well is he has said that he only communicated through Facebook with Robert Burns, yet Burns was being interviewed through, I believe it was the Brevard County case, and had said he had spoken with Guyton Stone a couple times.
Yeah.
So there's a problem there. It's going to be a question that's coming to the forefront. Was Guyton Stone truthful, or did he lie under oath about his communications with Robert Burns?
Well, I hope he goes to jail. I really do. I hope that it comes out and he's disgraced for what he's done, because he has lied, he has cheated, and he has stolen, in my opinion. Okay? And I don't mean that euphemistically. A $5,000 donation went out to the Boy Scout pack that he, his son, Howard Brown, the then sitting village manager, and his son comprised. That was the pack. That was it. That was the pack that got 5,000.
And these packs really can put anything out. There's very little accountability with packs.
No, Boy Scout pack.
Oh, Boy Scout. I thought you meant
troop.
pack.
Troop.
Okay.
Yeah, his Boy Scout troop.
Okay.
There were 4 people in it.
Okay. All right.
2 children, 2 adults, and $5,000. Where's the accountability?
Yeah.
Where is the accountability? Can he show us where he spent that money? Can you show me that you were a good steward with that money? Because you're not showing me you're a good steward with the taxpayers' money. So anyway, here he comes to town, Mr. Robert Burns. Now, Burns has been brought up on charges. There's a lot of those charges that you're talking about now stem from Indiantown. Scott Watson has put in a lot of complaints. Conversations have happened with Representative Fine, and like you said, the window is starting to open on this. And it's getting outside of Brevard County and finding other places. And I hope it doesn't stretch into Indian River County, because Howard Brown put in his resume to be the new county administrator in Indian River. Good heavens, folks. If you know somebody in Indian River County and they haven't made their decision yet, tell them to take Howard Brown off of their list. And if they'd like reasons why, I'm more than happy to talk to them. They can call me directly.
Scott's tuning in. I agree with Scott. He said, where are our records in Indiantown? I know Scott has had some real issues just getting public records requests. So, hopefully we're going to find some of these records at some point.
Don't tell Janet Hernandez that. I mean, she's got her hands up, ready to cry again, and rubbing her long black hair. She was all upset at the last meeting because Scott was actually given a 3-2 vote to return some of the money, tens of thousands of dollars that Howard Brown forced him to spend to get the information that really never even showed up. Public records request.
He had to hire an attorney
He had to hire an attorney to do it and spent tens of thousands of dollars. So at the last village council meeting, the government did the right thing. They said, look, we'd wronged this guy, give him his money back. And Janet threw her arms up and says, we all knew how this vote was going to go. Oh, this is so bad. You all are such bad people. She's in the minority now and she can't handle it.
Right.
She doesn't like it. And here's another interesting little tidbit for those of you that thought Taryn Krisner was gone and no longer involved in government policy
I was just going to mention Taryn is...
She has been brought in as the interim village manager until the village can decide to hire somebody, but I think they're probably going to take their own sweet time to do that because they'll end up liking Taryn so much, and God, I hope she doesn't get elected out there. Taryn's a great person. I've had conversations with Taryn. She's wonderful, but she is too good at what she does, and what she does is in complete disagreement philosophically with me and governmentally. When she made it almost impossible for employees to continue to work without wearing a mask or getting vaccinated during the sham and fiasco that I think everybody, the sheets are coming off on this now, and I think we can all see what this was, but her heavy-handed policies that she took there. She's very well educated in things like sustainable development. Sustainable development stems from Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, the 15-minute city, the walking city, the bike paths, the living community. This is her background and mentality, and she is very, very good at it. She is good at knowing the rules of what stands in complete contrast to constitutionalism.
Robert Burns is joining us here on Facebook. Hello, Robert. Would love to have you on the show and hear your side of the story, so I hope you will consider that.
Have him call in. If you're on Facebook, pick up the in-studio call line and call in right now, Mr. Burns. I'd love to have a conversation and ask you a few questions online.
That's 772-220-9788, 220-9788. I also want to follow up with Taryn Krista. She has taken over as the interim manager for Indiantown. She said it was going to be temporary. Commissioner Harold Jenkins, she works for him at Jenkins Landscaping. He said, I don't want to give her up. So time will tell, Eric, if this truly is an interim position or not. I will say I've heard a lot about Taryn and that it's such a mess that Howard Brown left. Incredible mess that a lot of people are grateful that somebody kind of knows how government should be run.
She's the right person for the right time.
Try and clean this up a little bit. Try and find these missing records. Are they even, let's step back 1 second. Back in December, Howard Brown's computer was erased.
Oh, come on. I know. Don't get me started. It's crazy. Yeah, it was ordered by the then interim Susan Owens. She took his laptop as quick as she could and had it scrubbed.
So this is where we're saying, what happened to all this information? So, all right, I think we have it here. We have all this information, though, and it's very important that we follow up on what's going on in Indiantown, where the records went, in every government, but where have the records went? And I think that we have Evan here. So you can't just lose records. This is what belongs to the people. And so when records disappear, I hope there's going to be some
accountability.
Some accountability.
Accountability.
100%.
There's a key word to lead into the next conversation, accountability.
All right, we have Robert Burns on the phone here. Robert, how are you doing today?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for calling in. And I have Eric Miller here with me with Talk About Martin. He's one of the folks out there in Indiantown. You've probably heard his name before, and as you can tell, Eric has done a lot of research here on what's happened in Indiantown, so would love to hear your side of the story of this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just tuned in, so I'm not sure what's all been talked about so far. But
well, we started with the rape and sodomy cases in the United States Army and how you were disgraced by your removal from the Army. And then we moved into your political career, how you have actually been able to manipulate the REC in Brevard County, how you have worked with candidates down here in Indiantown to spread false information as campaign managers, how you took $1,250 from Guyton Stone and Janet Hernandez, how you worked with Brian West and about all of the different complaints that are up against you as a fraud and a phony and a cheat right now with the Federal Elections Commission. How about using the voter rolls illegally to try and dox Barbara Cloudis? I mean, the list goes on, Brian, and I'm going to post them all on there. My question to you is, Robert, why don't you just come clean and let's clean house and let's have some contrition here? I think it's time for you to maybe give up the ghost a little bit and let's set the record straight.
I'm sorry, what was your first name again? I'm sorry.
My first name's Eric.
Eric. All right, well, since you got my name wrong, I'm not surprised that you got all those other things wrong, too. So it's Robert, it's not Brian. Everything else that you said is also false, so I'm not sure what you're basing that off of.
Okay, well, listen, if you go to talkaboutmartin.com and you just type in your name on there, you'll see a whole bunch of stories that tie not only my opinion, but public record and a lot of other, information, visual captures of communications that you've had with people like Anthony Dowling, Guyton Stone. Do you know Guyton Stone?
So what was it?
No. Do you know Guyton Stone? Do you know Guyton Stone? There's a direct question. Let's start there.
Let's go one by one.
Okay, Guyton Stone. Do you know Guyton Stone? One at a time.
This is me controlling this now.
No. This is my radio show, and I'm the guest here. I'm controlling it. You're calling in, and I can hang up on you, so you hang on.
And you're the guest.
It's my radio show. He's the guest. But it is an easy question. Do you know and have you spoken with Guyton Stone?
Yes, I know, and I've spoken with Guyton Stone as public record. But I want to back up to some of the. He made a lot of accusations just now, without any input from me whatsoever, and he's talking about public record. So let's go one by one if you'd like to, or if he just would like to have your listeners believe what he says is true. He can't even get my name right, and he thinks that it's his radio show as well. So let's.
I know I'm delusional, so put it on the table. Tell me where I'm wrong. Go ahead, put it on the table.
Okay, you said the rape and sodomy charges, and I was discharged. How'd you say it? Disgracefully from the military. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
What are you basing that on?
What am I basing it on?
Yeah. not reality, so I'm just curious what you're basing it on.
News reports on press conferences from females that served with you that made accusations and claims. Another one that just came forward publicly. You tell me, where are these people coming from? I'm not making it up. Why are these people chasing you? You must be just the neatest guy in the world that everybody just makes stuff up about.
And here,
Robert Burns the Third.
Here I am. Here I am.
Okay, so explain it to me. So tell me, were you ever brought up on rape charges in the military? Did you ever face the Universal Code of Military Justice under rape charges? Yes or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You know who that is? No, I haven't. But just because someone I'm running a campaign against that has lots and lots of money has someone fly halfway across the country the day after he literally supposedly learns about this, and then has a press conference where he paid this woman to be there and says all these things with absolutely no recourse whatsoever, doesn't mean it's true, Eric.
Well, that's one of five. That's one of five.
Eric,
that's one of five.
I'm talking. Eric, I'm talking.
Right.
I can have a press conference about anyone I want and say anything I want. I can write an article about anyone I want and say anything I want. Is that true? Yes, it's true.
Yes, it is, and you've done that. You did that with Guy Parker in Indiantown, accusing him of being a racist after taking money from Janet Hernandez and Guyton Stone.
Eric, you have to stop interrupting people.
No, you know what, Robert? I don't have to stop interrupting you because you are not a good guy. You have already been proven to be guilty. I know more about you than you want to think. I am so far in your head, Robert, that you can't even handle it. Now, your tactics, look.
You don't. I am retired honorably and highly decorated from the United States Army.
Right.
Now, you can say that I'm disgracefully discharged and all those things you want. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means that you've been sipping the same Kool-Aid that these guys want you to believe.
I'll post the proof, folks, at talkaboutmartin.com. That's fine. I'll put it out. I'll put out all the proof that I have.
Robert, I would
whatever you want on Martin.com. You can say today's Thursday on Martin.com. It doesn't mean it's true.
Robert, I'd love for you to come into the studio. We can go over these documents, you and I, that Eric has presented with his website, talkaboutmartin.com, because they're very compelling. So
right. Well, I know what documents he has, and I know what documents he doesn't have. What he doesn't have are complete records. He has records that have been cherry-picked and carefully edited for him.
So set the record straight. Show me your DD-214 that showed me you were honorably discharged.
It's all public, Eric.
No, the DD-214 is not public record. That is private.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. I served in the military myself. The DD-214 is not public.
Eric, if you stop interrupting me, you'll hear the explanation. Yes, a DD-214 is not a public document, but I've made mine public. So if you let me finish a sentence without interrupting because you think you know the answer, then you'll get the answer. But I don't think that you want the answers. I think that you just want people to go to Martin.com, and see what other
Brian, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert. That's talkaboutmartin.com, not martin.com. So you don't even get the website right. How can you be certain that you know that all the things on the website are even right if you can't even pronounce it? Don't play games with me. I'm telling you, I've got the goods on you. I know the investigations are going on, and I hope you go down hard for them. The few fines that you've paid right now.
You know what Randy Fine has told you.
No, who's Randy Fine? I've filed complaints against you. So has Scott Watson. So have other people filed complaints against you. And those are the complaints.
Where are they, Eric? Where are those complaints? What is the disposition of those complaints, Eric?
Those complaints are currently in process.
Robert, I would love for you to come back. We need to talk about this further. I want to present to you a lot of the documents that Eric has, and that I want to hear your side of it.
Okay, now I can hear you. I lost you for a second.
Oh, I was going to say, I'd love for you to come back. And would like to present these documents that Eric has, because he has put together a lot. This has been something that's been going on since the 2020 election.
Yep.
And I would like to hear your side of it and let you describe why these documents, if you're saying they're inaccurate, what's inaccurate about them. And the DD2, you just said you were going to...
Yeah, Adkins. Tell me about Adkins. Tell me about your liaison with the school board member. Yeah, I know one thing
Eric,
at a time because there's so much that you
jumping
can't cover your tracks. There's so much to talk about with you, but you've never done any of it. It's amazing how this whole big propaganda story about a war hero like yourself has come up, and oh my goodness, he's such an indelible figure. Everybody's out to get you, aren't they, Robert Burns III?
Robert, let me ask a question here. Let's step back. Eric, I know you're very passionate, and this is an opportunity.
The guy's a rapist, a liar, and a crook.
Robert, when you were working in Indiantown, who did you work with? Who were you working on their campaigns with? It was just, for our community, it's been something that we're interested how somebody from Brevard County all of a sudden comes and infiltrates little tiny Indiantown.
I'm happy to help you there. It's not a secret and it's not a conspiracy. It's very clear. I get paid to run campaigns and consult for political campaigns.
So who brought you? Who brought you to the table?
Eric, the adults are talking. Is that okay if we have a conversation without you interrupting?
We'll see.
Okay, let's try real hard.
At ease.
All right.
At ease, Burns.
Okay, I retired, not you. So what happened? I got consulted to run an election down in Indiantown. Before this, I had never even heard of Indiantown. I didn't know it existed. I had to drive down there and see it for myself to kind of assess the situation. I normally do much larger races than a place like Indiantown that has under 1,000
Did Howard meet with you?
Eric.
Yeah.
Eric.
Who brought you in when you were coming down to Indiantown and told you about this it really was a new incorporated village since 2018?
I was contacted and consulted by Brian West. Brian West called me and asked me to take a look at this race and see if it would be winnable. I drove down there, and that's what I did. They hired me to consult on it, and that's what I did. I helped consult on that election and ran advertisements.
Is that what you call the advertisements that you ran against Guy Parker? You call that consulting? That was an outright lie. It was a fabrication, and it was, if that's the type of consulting that you do, again, I don't know how the Republican Party allows crooks like you to stay in it. They should run you the heck out of the Brevard REC. You are a stain upon their honor.
You seem to have all the answers.
I have quite a few. You're exactly right. I have quite a few. You have made that observation correct, Mr. Burns. I do have a lot of answers. That bothers you, I bet. And now they're going public.
So, Robert, you came down. Mr. West hired you to come down and consult for these campaigns. Guytonstone was one campaign. Did you consult on another campaign as well?
No, only Guytonstone. That was the only race.
Okay.
Did you take money from Janet?
Eric has a question. I guess that's a fair question.
Did you take money from Janet Hernandez?
Oh, I thought you had all the answers, Eric. You're asking questions now?
Well, that's how you get the answers, is by asking questions, Robert. Why don't you?
It's funny because you've never asked me a question.
You haven't answered one straight out either, without having to make me beat you over the head with a hammer to try to get your tongue to wag, young man.
This is the first question you've asked me, and I've already answered it, but let me answer it again. I consulted on one campaign. That was Guytonstone. So the answer to your question is no. I don't even know who the other person is that you're referring to.
Well, she was actually a candidate, so I guess your analysis of the race can't be that good. You know, people, if you're looking at hiring this guy, I'd really give it some consideration. I really would, because he's scandal-ridden. Be careful who you stand beside, because you will be known by the people that you stand alongside. Convicted pedophiles. Yeah, like convicted pedophiles. Huh?
Convicted pedophile?
Yeah, your cousin. Your cousin.
Oh, he's a convicted pedophile. Why don't you explain that to me?
Okay, I'll put it on. I don't have time right now. I'll put it on the website. I'll put the arrest records. I'll put the conviction outcome. I'll put it all up on the web. It's already posted. I've already done stories on it. So anybody wants to go to talkaboutmartin.com, you're happy to find it. Just type in Kenny Johnson and Robert Burns. You'll find the information.
Yeah, can I ask you one question? What's your net worth? Because I just want to see how much we're going to be able to recover.
My net worth?
Yeah.
Yeah, you go right ahead.
I'm just curious. Is it going to be worth my time or not?
I don't know. You'll have to figure that out. You've got all the answers, Robert. You go ahead and figure it out. You really, you go right ahead.
I usually ask questions without giving answers. So
yeah.
That's why I was just curious. That's the easy one. But let's go back to Martin County if you'd like. So no, I don't know who the other person is. He was not a candidate in the race. There were two candidates in the race that I was consulted for, Eric, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. There was Guytonstone and Guy Parker. Those were the only candidates in the race that I was consulted for.
And that is the race you came in, and that's one of the things that you have, and you can let me know if this is correct, Robert, but the 116 charges of illegal elections fraud, that's a current...
Okay, well, yeah, and I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to take things one by one.
Okay.
So I've seen this a lot. That's the first time I heard 115. It's usually 142. That's what Randy posts every other day. The real answer is there's zero. There are zero charges for election fraud. Not one. That's the answer to that question. Florida Statute 116, and Scott Watson's watching this, and he can probably tell you as well. Florida Statute 116 is for campaign finance. If you look up the Florida statutes for election fraud, and if you go to the FEC's or the election fraud website, you will see that it says, and the frequently asked questions, that Florida Statute 116 does not fall under election fraud in any capacity. So I am not facing any election fraud charges, let alone 115 or 142.
Robert, I've got to wind up the show today, unfortunately. Will you come back, whether you call or come here in the studio, and we can go further, you and I, what is going on here in Indiantown and some of the things that are happening up in Brevard County as well with the Robert Fine election. I know that you said Brian West hired you. You worked with Guyton Stone. Will you come back?
Yes, I'm not sure where is your studio located.
Stuart.
I'm not sure.
I'm right here in Stuart, just not too far from Indiantown, as a matter of fact. Yes.
Okay. It might be difficult for me to come there, but I can certainly call in for you.
Would love to have you do that. We're going to have to do that. One final question: did you meet with anybody else in Indiantown besides Guyton and Brian West?
No, and I don't think that Brian West lives in Indiantown, but the only person I've ever worked for in Martin County, let alone Indiantown, is Guyton Stone, and that's it. But I just want to make the point, there's a lot of accusations and a lot of things that are being said as fact, but just like I just kind of pointed out to you right now, with when you say he's facing, it's just not true, and it's easy to see that that's not true just by doing a quick look. What is election fraud? All these things have Florida statutes. So when somebody says that someone's facing 140 plus election fraud charges and it's not even possible under the statute, that's how things and people like Eric here get spun out of control, thinking that they know things that they do not, because they're just regurgitating something that's being propagated by a person like Randy Fine, who does this professionally.
That's followed you your entire life. The story of your
Robert,
life.
We got to go. I've got to wrap this show up. Robert, I'm going to be in touch. We're going to come back and.
You haven't heard the last of me.
No, we're going to come back and we're going to go over everything that you have, Eric. So, Robert, I'll be in touch with you. In the meantime, folks, I want to let you know that next week we're going to have Shane Snavely on. He's a political aide and campaign strategist. It's very similar to something here. He's going through an ethics complaint with Virginia Senator Amanda Chase. So he's in town and he's coming into the studio to talk about that. And then, folks, on Wednesday, March 22nd, very, very important show. We're going to be talking about bomb trains. That's our good old Brightline FEC, Florida East Coast Railway. They are transporting LNG, a.k.a. bomb trains. If you don't think this is something serious, we had the accident up in Palestine, Ohio this past week. That wasn't even LNG. That's a lamb compared to what LNG can be. It is traveling through our communities. LNG was not even allowed to be transported on trains until some executive orders through the Trump administration. And I'm going to go through on the 22nd. We're going to go back. I've been involved with this for over a decade with the train. We're going to go back, find out where we are today. How did we get here? What are elected officials doing? Or really a better term is what they're not doing. And folks, with this LNG, it's lighter than air. It's explosive. The fire departments, rescue people cannot put this stuff out. It's horrific. You want to look, I'll share some videos from China of LNG explosions. Lighter than air, hits it, explodes. There's fire everywhere. And if you think this can't happen here, in 2004 in Stuart, 30 trains derailed just north of the bridge. 30 trains. Luckily, they were just rock trains at the time. But wait till you have something like LNG on these trains. And mind you, we've got Brightline going 110 miles per hour. We've got regular freight trains at 80 miles per hour. And then we have these LNG trains at 40 miles per hour, all traveling on the same tracks. So we're hoping and praying, and that's pretty much what our elected officials have left for us to do, is hope and pray that everything goes just right. Everybody changes the rail so that none of the trains collide. Folks, there's also one section on this train system that is single-tracked. You know it. It's the St. Lucie Bridge. It's going to be closed for 3 weeks. If you're west of the bridge, too bad. You're staying back there. But that is a choke point. It's a single line. Even the retrofit that they're doing is not making it double track. It's a single line with all these trains. So I'm going to go through this. We're going to go through the Board of County Commissioners here in Martin County, their settlement, why LNG is legal to travel on the rail here in Florida. It also does in Alaska, and what that means. So I need to check out right now. But again, March 22nd, we're going to be talking about bomb trains. We're going to be talking about Brightline and what it means to our community, and we need to speak up. I hope to see you then. Thank you, Eric Millick. Talk about
Thanks
Martin.
for being here, Casey.